In the heart of a raging flood, a stray dog's desperate howl changed a lonely man's life forever. Days of relentless rain had transformed the Myra River into a furious, untamed beast. The once familiar grassy banks vanished beneath the swirling waters. Trees were violently uprooted, and long-forgotten human debris bobbed aimlessly in the churning current. Amidst this watery chaos, a makeshift raft of trash and driftwood drifted downstream, carrying precious cargo. Perched precariously atop this fragile vessel stood Luna, a stray female dog with dark gray fur, now matted and caked with mud. Her golden eyes were wide with terror as she struggled to maintain her balance, legs spread wide on the unstable surface. Huddled beneath her, 3 tiny puppies whimpered and trembled, seeking shelter from the storm's fury. Suddenly, a plank beneath Luna's paw gave way, causing the raft to lurch violently.
Ow.
One of the puppies teetered on the edge, nearly plunging into the raging waters. In that moment of desperation, Luna let out a heart-wrenching howl, not a bark, but a cry of anguish and despair that echoed hauntingly between the pounding rain and the roaring river. On the shore, a solitary figure stood frozen, his hands gripping a wooden staff. This was Mateo, a man who had long ago retreated from the world to live in isolation in a small shack by the river's edge. Years before, a devastating flood had claimed the lives of his family, leaving him scarred and afraid to approach the deep waters that had taken everything from him. But as he watched the stray dog fighting valiantly to protect her vulnerable litter in the merciless current, something stirred within Mateo's long-dormant heart. Without conscious thought, he dropped his staff and rushed to his hut, grabbing an old coil of rope that hung forgotten on the wall. With trembling hands, he secured one end of the rope around his waist and tied the other to a sturdy tree before wading into the icy, turbulent water. The current immediately tugged at Mateo, threatening to sweep him away, but he remained focused on Luna and her puppies. "Hold on," he whispered, as much to himself as to the struggling animals. "Don't give up." As Mateo drew closer, the raft pitched and rolled violently. One of the puppies lost its footing and slid towards the water's edge. In a moment of pure instinct, Mateo lunged forward, snatching the tiny creature from certain doom and tucking it safely inside his waterlogged coat. Luna growled weakly, her maternal instincts flaring, but as their eyes met, her gaze softened with a glimmer of trust. Emboldened, Mateo reached for the second puppy, securing it alongside its sibling. Just as he extended his hand towards Luna, a massive wave crashed over them. The fragile raft splintered apart, and both Mateo and Luna were plunged beneath the roiling gray water. In the freezing depths, Mateo clung desperately to the 2 puppies, his limbs growing numb and his lungs burning for air. Just as his vision began to darken, he felt a sharp tug on the rope around his waist. Unbeknownst to Mateo, a young villager named Elias had witnessed the unfolding drama from afar. Without hesitation, the teenager had sprinted to the shore, grabbed hold of the lifeline, and called out for help. 3 more villagers rushed to his aid, and together they hauled on the rope with all their might. Inch by agonizing inch, they pulled Mateo, Luna, and the puppies back to solid ground, where they collapsed in a shivering, bedraggled heap. When Mateo finally opened his eyes, he was greeted by a clear sky, the storm having passed as suddenly as it had arrived. Luna lay pressed against him, her muzzle resting gently on his trembling hand. In the days that followed, word of Mateo's heroic rescue spread through the village. People came bearing food, blankets, and words of kindness. For the first time in years, Mateo began to see the river not as a monstrous entity that had stolen his happiness, but as a force of nature capable of both destruction and renewal. A photograph of Mateo warming the dogs by his humble fireplace quickly went viral on social media. When asked why he had risked his life to save them, Mateo's response was simple, yet profound. Gently stroking Luna's fur, he whispered, "Because once, I couldn't save the ones I loved, but this time, I could." In the flickering firelight, with the soft murmur of the river in the distance, a man who had lost everything found a reason to live again, all because of a desperate howl on a flooded river. As the days passed, Mateo set about creating a cozy corner in his small hut to serve as a shelter for Luna and her 3 puppies. At first, Luna remained cautious, her golden eyes tracking Mateo's every movement with a mixture of gratitude and lingering wariness. But as night fell and the wind howled against the walls of the shack, Luna quietly pressed herself against Mateo's legs, while the puppies curled up contentedly by the fire. Gradually, the fear in Luna's eyes faded away, replaced by a look of trust and affection. Her tail would wag softly whenever Mateo returned from his daily walks along the riverbank. The puppies grew quickly, their playful antics filling the one silent hut with the joyous sounds of barking and scampering paws. For the first time since that fateful day when the flood had taken his family, Mateo found himself laughing, a sound he had thought lost forever. Word of Mateo's newfound family spread through the village, and people began to stop by more frequently. They brought scraps of food for the dogs and stayed to chat, drawn by the warmth that now emanated from the once lonely shack. An old woman, her eyes glistening with emotion, remarked one day, "You're smiling again, Mateo. It's good to see." As the weeks turned to months, Mateo and his canine companions settled into a comfortable routine. Luna proved to be an excellent companion on Mateo's walks, her keen senses often alerting him to changes in the river's mood long before he could perceive them himself. The puppies, now growing into strong young dogs, became beloved fixtures in the village, greeting everyone with wagging tails and sloppy kisses. One sunny afternoon, as Mateo sat on the porch of his hut, Luna rested her muzzle on his knee, while the puppies scrambled into his lap, stroking their fur gently. Mateo spoke softly, as if addressing long-lost family members. "From now on, this is your home, and you are my family too." From that day forward, the little riverside hut was no longer a place of isolation and sorrow. Each morning brought the joyful barking of the dogs, Mateo's warm smile, and the steady flow of the river, no longer a source of fear, but an old friend who had, in its own way, returned to Mateo what he had lost. As news of Mateo's story spread beyond the village, people from neighboring towns began to visit. Drawn by the tale of redemption and the healing power of unexpected connections, some brought donations of dog food and supplies, while others simply came to sit by the river and share in the peace that now radiated from Mateo and his canine family. Inspired by his experience, Mateo began to work with local animal rescue organizations, using his newfound purpose to help other stray animals in need. He became known as the River Guardian, always ready to lend a hand, or a paw, to those in distress. Years passed, and the once dilapidated shack transformed into a warm and welcoming home. Luna's puppies grew into strong, loyal dogs, each with their own unique personality. Gao, once a shadow of a man, now stood tall and proud, his eyes shining with the light of renewed purpose and love. On quiet evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the river in hues of gold and crimson, Mateo would often sit on his porch, surrounded by his furry family. We would reflect on the twist of fate that had brought them together, a desperate howl in the midst of a raging flood that had not only saved Luna and her puppies, but had also rescued Mateo from the depths of his own despair. In those moments, with Luna's head resting on his lap and the sound of playful barks filling the air, Mateo would smile and whisper a quiet thank you to the river, for in its unpredictable flow, it had washed away his pain and brought him a new family, proving that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found in the most unexpected places. And so, the little hut by the Myra River became more than just a home. It became a symbol of resilience, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Mateo's story served as a reminder to all who heard it that sometimes, in saving others, we end up saving ourselves.